Welcome back to the Driveway Marketing Podcast. We've got a stud today. I was just in horse country in Ocala, Florida, which is considered the world horse capital. We learned a lot about horse breeding and horse stuff. Seriously, like helicopter pads on your horse farm, like serious, like money, like you have no idea. People winter their horses in Florida and then they summer somewhere else. I'm like, for real. Could you imagine? I want to say 26 barns, quote unquote, arenas, each one of them over the size of a football field, completely air conditioned to show your horses. 26 of them, not two.
That
20,
is a world I don't even understand.
I
don't
didn't even know it
understand.
existed. We just rented an Airbnb and it says it was on a working horse farm. And they're like, you got to go check this out. You got to go check this out. So it was again, people say there's riches and niches. I mean, I'm not telling you, people are crazy about lots of stuff, and I'm sure there are people that do home services just for people that are horse people, right? So anyway, but thanks for being with us, Ryan. For you guys that are listeners to me, I'm fairly new to the podcast business, but not new to the business game. I've been at this for almost 30 years. We love to help build and scale companies and transform people into the people they want to be instead of the ones they are currently. So but I was fortunate enough to ask Bryan to come on, and he said yes. Yay, Ryan! Thanks for being here.
I am really honored to be here. Thanks for having me on, and we can talk about horses. Like for me, ignorantly, all you want. This is a lot
Dude,
of fun.
I got nothing. All I know is they're really cool looking, and when they have little foals and they come up to you and like snuggle with you, you kind of wonder, are they going to bite my hands off? So they still could kick you or do other stuff. So, but they
That
are
is a fact.
magnificent. They are magnificent animals, and didn't even know. And oh, by the way, they sell for a couple 100,000 a piece, and those are just run of the mill ones. So maybe I'm in the wrong business, but I don't know.
Horses ain't cheap.
Horses are not cheap. No, that's for sure. So speaking of that, and another thing, and I'll put in the show notes links to Ryan's website. One thing I want to ask, congratulations on having a book. I want to talk. So what made you? So I'm an author. I've written a couple books. My clients have written books. So and obviously, and you talked about it. I think it was on. You talked about the pyramid or someone else. The pyramid is the experts write books, and everyone else doesn't. So I gotta ask, like, so what made you decide? Because it's a lot of work, right? I know today everyone wants to punch an AI button and it'll be done in 3 seconds, but
That doesn't work that way. Yeah.
meaningful books. Like, so what made you decide to write a book? What made
Um.
you decide?
Yeah. So the honest answer, as with so many things for me, is I didn't want to. Like, I didn't want to write a book. I had no interest in writing a book because writing a book sucks. It's a lot, a lot of work. It's a lot of research. It's a lot. And in my world, so like my business, we primarily do like digital marketing for like home service companies, like HVAC, electrical, plumbing.
Sure.
I'm like, I'm expecting the ROI of these efforts to be near zero.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
I don't, like I'm not doing this to get rich quick. I'm not doing this like it's just like, oh gosh, this is the world's most expensive business card ever. But yeah, I had a friend of mine who just kept saying, you got to write a book, you write a book. And then I had a guy who mentored me for a while, and we were at coffee one day, and we're talking about different things, and he goes, all right, bro, you're not gonna like this, but you got to write a book. Like, you just got to write a book. And it's like when your cool uncle says to clean your room, it hits different than when your mom says to clean your room. It's like, all right, so I guess I'm writing a book. So yeah, reluctantly I began that process.
So and for those that are listening, right? So obviously it's going to be all kinds of different people listening. So you don't necessarily, if you are a home service provider, in fact, today's cleaning day, our cleaning company showed up, our pool guy comes, like I don't think you need to necessarily go through the effort of the entire book, but there are certainly segments of things you could do, right? People talk about the lead magnets, right? Or special reports or something. You can do something on a much, 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 much smaller scale to set yourself apart in your community, if whatever you're trying to do. Because here's a secret: your competitors are they're doing nothing,
Yeah,
right?
I think especially like Google, understanding Google is kind of a big part of what my company has to do. And since March of this year, since March of 2024, Google's made a big concerted effort to valuing businesses and websites by proxy that focus on providing helpful information to humans.
Right.
Like, so it doesn't have to be a book. It could be a podcast. It could be YouTube videos. It could be whatever sort of format. But find something that has value to the customers that you've identified that you want to target and serve and support, and
100%.
just give value away. Like, don't put it behind a paywall. Don't like do something weird. Like, just give it to the world. And you will find, at least in my experience, by doing things like that, it usually comes back way more than you could calculate that return.
Yep, and that's a little differentiator from what I want to talk about when we're talking about this stuff. But I'm a Dan Kennedy guy, so those are listeners. You've heard me talking about him, and so Dan has all kinds of laws, right? And so he has his. Dan is the author of Magnetic Marketing. He's founded all this other stuff, and one of the things he talks about is that in his unique selling proposition kind of methodology is not only are you competing with why do I want to do business with you over all your other competitors, including doing nothing at all, right? So that's a big time if you're upgrading a system, doing other stuff, you may decide to do it yourself or DIY it, which is fantastic. But as long as they buy from me, right? So we can't determine when a
Mhm.
buyer is going to happen. But if they have a book, they're listening to your podcast, they're watching your YouTube channel, you could provide tons of valuable content. I've become a YouTube addict. My kids make fun of me because I envision like buying every junk car and turning into like a Chip Foose $1 million ride or something like that. But I don't have any of the talent to actually do that, but I enjoy the hell out of it. But look at all these guys that are telling stories about their time on the job, showing weird stuff that are happening on HVAC sites, plumbing disasters, like whatever it is. There's an angle for everything. And again, to be the celebrity in your community, I would imagine the vast majority of people in your customer base is they don't need to be the celebrity across the United States. They don't need to be the Kardashians. They just need to be the quote unquote the Kardashians of Imperial Golf Estates and a 5 mile circle around it. Because I would imagine that the vast majority of their business is
Uh,
where their base is in some geographic thing around it, right?
yeah, and I would actually take it. I'm a huge fan of Seth Godin. Seth, if people haven't heard of him or read any of his things, he's a really really brilliant marketing mind. He talks about the importance of differentiation. So I think a lot of people think about being different from your competition, right? Like, hey, how do I stand out against this other company that does similar things because it's a crowded space wherever you are? He makes a point to go like, that's not the point of differentiation. The point of differentiation is to separate your ideal customer from the non-ideal
Yeah,
customer.
that's exactly right.
So if right, if you think about what a company can do, if they find like, hey, these are the type of customers we really want to work with, these are the things that they really care about, these are the things they really prioritize, give information that's for your target perfect customer. And when you do that, all your other marketing efforts are multiplied. But you're not necessarily saying, hey, you're a warm body in a 5 mile radius. That's kind of entirely missing the point. But you're pulling yourself apart and adding value to the people who you most want to work with.
That's a great determination there because you think about magnets attract and deter.
Hmm.
Right? So people often think
Hmm.
about magnetic marketing as a pull, like the law of attraction, and it's also the law of like I'm not a good fit for you. So if you are, we talk a lot
Yeah.
about in the masterminds I'm in and the peer groups I'm in, we talk a lot about price, price elasticity or how much more can I charge? And the general component is, double it until they stop buying, right? And in some cases you can do that. In some markets and some things you can't. But at some point you will push away those people, and that might be okay because you could do one job at X price, and you have to do 5 jobs at point 4 X price at less profit, right? So sometimes working smarter is better than working harder. As you guys have heard, my wife's an interior designer. She's an interior design coach, and we are blessed to work at an unbelievably cool market. And our business has significantly grown because we do less work. That part of our home service business, we do less work because we spend lots of time auditioning clients to make sure they fit into what they need to do. Where competitors just want to throw out a budget right away and send some emails and hope they get the job going, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare. I'm going to use HVAC because I know it. An HVAC project may last a couple days, a commercial might last a week. An interior design project can last 18 months, a construction project can last a year or more. So if you don't attract the right people to what you're trying to do, I don't care how much money you're making, you're going to lose your mind. Right. So, um,
Yeah.
and and back to the book, right? So people that appreciate the fact that you took the time and effort, um, I would be curious as people you talk to that have done the book, have you ever heard of anyone throwing it out?
No, if anything, a big point for me because I feel like in the world of marketing, especially digital marketing, there's a lot of jargon that's confusing or sometimes contradictory with what one person says another.
Sure.
So I really tried to make it a reference guide that people could have handy to like put into English what these things mean, how to understand it, the working, not necessarily to create a digital marketer, like that's not quite the right intent, but to give a business owner or a leader in a business enough acumen and enough vocabulary to manage marketing efforts from a managerial perspective.
Right.
So, yeah, because of that, no, they don't get rid of it. They usually keep it like within arm's reach of their desk, and they kind of flip to different sorts of the resource library just to make sure that they're understanding something if they talk to somebody with a certain sort of focus or specialization.
And that's a super important thing, right? So don't, and maybe I'll ask you this as a question for people that hire marketers. So if the people, so if I'm an owner in a market, and I want to hire you. What are some of the challenge, like, cause what are what are the things they should be thinking about before hiring any marketer, right? Because not even just you, but hiring any, like, so is that kind of what your book talks about? Or like, what are some of the things that,
Yeah, in part. So the deal, I think when I talk to people, and we have like a big TikTok channel, YouTube channel that kind of addresses questions like these too.
sure.
One of the things that I encourage people to do is before you look for to hire an internal marketer, like hiring someone on your team, or to hire an external sort of vendor to do marketing for you, be really, really, really clear on the goals you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah,
Be
exactly.
really clear because it's really common for people to say, "Hey, I'm looking for a marketer because work's slow or my job board's empty or what I just need more calls, whatever." And all they're thinking about is, "I just need more." Like whatever that more is, right? They just need more of the thing. But more isn't the goal. It's not a target. Um, and so to be really, really clear on, hey, we're wanting to lower our cost of acquisition. Hey, we're wanting to improve our lifetime value. Hey, we're wanting to differentiate and actually have a branding play. To be really, really clear on what they're trying to do. And then I'm a big fan of find somebody. There's a whole lot of really good people in a lot of spaces that can do really amazing work. Find someone who shares your values and ethics. If you find someone who doesn't share your or your company's core values or your personal sense of ethics on how you view the world, it's going to be a really, really difficult relationship to manage and build from. And at the end of the day, I would argue the hardest part to find isn't the skill, it's not the competency. It really is people you can have great relationships with.
Right.
That's the
Yes.
hardest part of the equation.
Right, because in
So,
essence, they really are,
yeah,
and they become truly a part of your team if you think of it, and if they allow you to, right?
yeah,
I think one of the mistakes owners make, and I've had this in my business, right, is they, well, you're our vendor. I'm like, well, no, we look at it as we're an extension of your team because if we're not all aligned to the same goals, just again, what you said, just hire someone who's going to fill the next three. If you're really just looking for the next 3 weeks or months worth of stuff, then just hire someone to fill the next 3 or 4 weeks worth of
yeah,
job bookings or whatever it is, and then you'll get onto the important stuff, which is building a legacy business, building long lasting, maybe sell it, pass to your kid, like whatever the kind of whatever that long term vision is. But don't just think about it as a tactical response to, hey, business, every business needs customers. What they really want are clients for life that stay and
yeah.
refer like
That's
anybody else.
really where they're making a killing. And I think that actually brings up another good point that I think a lot of people maybe make a mistake when they're looking to hire a marketing, either again, internal hire or an external vendor,
Sure.
is they think that marketing drives ROI and they'll like judge, oh, well, we did AdWords or we did social media or we did this or we did this company and the ROI just wasn't there. And I think marketing as a function of ROI is the biggest myth out there that makes people make really dumb choices. I would make the argument that ROI comes from ops. It comes from operational excellence, and which is how you create your lifetime customers, right? It's do you make sure every lead that comes in, you capitalize the opportunity? Do you maximize your ticket price? Do you understand how to maximize the opportunity that your marketing efforts just created for you? The ability for you to engage with the customer, close the customer, retain the customer beyond that initial transaction. That's where you're going to see the guys with really sky high ROI. And guess what? None of that's marketing.
Right. I was just gonna
None of
say
it.
you
That's
went there,
operational efficiency.
and I'll even say
Yeah.
you use the S word, and that was sales. Right? Because people, there's a lot, and then a lot of people talk about, you don't need sales if you have marketing, right? Well, someone needs to, maybe we call it operations, right? someone needs to take the client across the finish line because your good
Yeah.
marketing, if yeah, I would have, the good marketing is bringing the right people to the table or ready, willing, and able buyers in some time window. Well, hopefully it's soon, but it's sometimes it's not, right?
Yeah.
Um, back to the as long as I buy from you thing, right? But I think the idea would be is like, and so as a marketer, how would you uncover or what are some things that we should think about as far as if you're going after a marketing effort, you know, do you identify operational components, meaning fulfillment, meaning sale? Like, to talk to me a little bit about it because you talk about ops, but I heard sales because I'm a sales guy, right? And I'm sure there's ops
Yeah.
people
Well,
listening going,
sales
"Oh, don't
sales is a
expect my
component in
guys,
there.
don't expect my
Yeah.
techs to ask for a customer service survey and promise that they'll give them $5 if they do it." Like, that's not the point of a customer service survey. Is it's the
Yeah.
survey's done so that people are doing the right work, right?
Yep. Yeah. So the entire how do I say this? The misnomer I would say is people think, well, marketing drives ROI, and if you have the right marketing dialed in, everything else works. In reality, great marketing cannot overcome bad operations.
Right.
It just can't. I would lump sales in that sort of process of ops from like a high level. And you could say, well, sales is like the inverse side of the coin of marketing. And oh, cool. Like we could have a glass of
Right.
scotch and debate the nuances of that. I'm cool. But the point is, marketing is going to get you on the customer's mind in a way that they want to work with you.
Right.
That's it. It is up to your business, either on the sales side or the fulfillment side or the product delivery side or whatever your model is, to actually make it profitable,
Right.
to make the most of that opportunity. Now, because of that, marketing then I would argue is probably like cost of acquisition. You'd say, cool, how efficient does different sorts of marketing produce leads for you? And you have to make sure you understand what you're measuring. If you're doing TV or billboard or radio ads for the first time, you can expect your ROI to be negative for probably the first 12 months. Like, that's just how those channels work. It doesn't mean that they're broken. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong. Those like McDonald's spends billions of dollars on billboards and radio and TV, not because they make a dollar that day, not because they make a bajillion dollars over next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. So just make sure you understand like how you're calculating the success of a given channel. But at the end of the day, it's up to your ops, it's up to your SOPs, it's up to your processes, it's up to the customer experience, it's up to your retention ability to make sure you're maximizing the ROI of that cost of acquisition.
Oh my god. So now you just gave me ideas for like 10 more episodes on just all that stuff, right? Because in my business, right, we do, I don't even know, 120 different things for 20 different clients. And we're built, and we spent, and by the way, we have spent the last year and a half. I heard that right, year and a half building SOPs on things
Yeah.
like how do we send a postcard if a client asks us to? How do we answer inbound inquiry, right? How do we do that? How do we do that stuff? Because I don't know if you script it, if you think about where people don't like to sell. My wife's a total introvert. She hates the sales. She's like, "You are evil. How do you go walk up to someone in an event?" She's like, "I just rather throw up, like, or I'd rather walk naked across the stage. I'd rather throw up." But if you script it, if your marketing does it well and you script it and you're talking to the right people, it doesn't feel salesy because sales is not a four-letter word. Revenue is what allows the companies to grow. So marketing should help
Yeah.
revenue, and actually maybe we should call it RevOps instead of, that's a new thing, isn't that a thing now? Revenue
Yeah,
operations.
sure. We'll do that. Yeah, I'm good
Yeah.
with that.
So maybe we call it RevOps because it's the privilege of getting that client. And then Ryan made a really important point to listen. Understand your numbers of your client acquisition costs. I think that, and I was a consultant for years, and I'd be like, "What's your average sale?" And guess what the answer was every single time? Well, it's different. How is it different? How many invoices did you last month? What was the total number? It's the
How's an
number.
average different?
I don't know. I hear that all the time. Well, it's really different. Well, some sales are $200 and some are $30,000. Okay, well, how many $30,000 ones and how many $200 ones? It's just a number, right? So you have to know your number because some businesses that have repeatabilities, you can go a little bit negative or cost break even or make a little bit of money because you're going to make money forever. And back to the McDonald's thing. If McDonald's can
Yeah.
get you to turn right or turn left off an exit because you feel like your kids heard something that do some McDonald's thing, or after baseball practice or soccer practice one night, they know you're gonna come and they know how much you're gonna spend when you walk through the door.
Yeah. Yeah, and McDonald's, in some ways, I feel like the large behemoth companies are difficult for most business owners to learn from
Mm.
because the scale that they operate is
Right.
so extreme that it's hard to directly apply insights. Like McDonald's, for instance, might make a nickel or a dime on a singular customer visit, right? Like minuscule. However, you multiply that over millions of customer visits in a day and millions of those same customer visits recurring over a lifetime of that one particular customer, those dimes and those nickels add up really, really fast. Microsoft, they famously, when they announced the Xbox they sold at a loss. They designed this video game system and they're putting it in the wild. They're not even covering their cost of goods to put this thing on the shelf. But that's not where they're making the money. They're making their money on the video game licenses, on people buying new games to play, like all the subscription fees for the Xbox Live. The lifetime value, even if it's 5, 7, 10, 15 years, whatever, that's where they're looking at making their profitability. So you just need the platform with which to do it. So a lot of businesses do have that ability, right? A plumber has the ability to do a tankless water heater flush to get it ready. They're going to lose money in that call. They will. But if they have a great relationship, they're going to get every other call that follows for the
Right.
life that person is in the house.
So is that a good example? So is that a good example? So for plumbers that are listening, having I know in the HVAC space, it's the tune up or customer or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
obviously we as marketers would find other ways, something else to call it, right? And then how can you add more things that are valuable without any cost, right? Here's your
Yeah.
flush guide.
I mean, every
Here's
business, it's
area.
gonna be
It's
like
all
a
good.
foot in the door. It's find your low cost foot in the door. It could be, hey, download our checklist. Hey, we're gonna do filter replacements for your AC on us, whatever it is. Like every business is gonna have something that they can attract the opportunity to be face to face with the customer. It's gonna cost them a little bit for that opportunity, but if they capitalize on it, they'll create a lifetime customer.
And then how do you feel about, so I want to ask you, I want to change gears a little bit. So let's just say that we've done one of those methods, right? We've acquired the customer. So if you, I know, we've talked a lot about the big guys. So if I'm a small guy, right? We talked about the one guy with the 5 mile radius or two people, whatever. I mean, where do you think they should start as far so they get if they're hopefully you're smart enough to have your entry level offer that's a no-brainer. There's a guy right now, Alex Hermosi. If you haven't read some of his stuff, you
Mm.
should listen and read his stuff. Because if your offer doesn't make you feel a little uneasy, it probably isn't good enough, right? So that area, he's kind of taken the some of the stuff he's learned into another level, which I find really kind of interesting because we're all coming up with new products and services, and I have one I'm working on where I'm going, oh, it makes me kind of sick because like, what if I lose my butt on this stuff? But then people I'm talking to are going, where do I sign up? That's really good. And so, I think you need to think, how can you think about that? But so say they have a good offer. What are 2 or 3 things that they, absolutely must do that's achievable by anybody? Marketing automation systems, nothing fancy. What are some things that they could think about to get them up to kind of that, to get to that $1 million range, right? Because I think a lot of people that listen to my audience are guys that are getting from 250 to 500, 500 to a million, million to two. Like that's how it goes, right? These different steps depending on the ticket price of what you're selling. But what you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do, and I don't. This is what's weird is, and I think Alex Ramosi and his wife too are both really, really brilliant. I love what they write and speak about. One of the other aspects of what he talks about there is like make an offer that's so good that people feel dumb saying no to it.
Exactly. Well,
Right?
right,
Like
right. Let's
it's
now I'm
such a
talking about from
nope.
your
Yeah,
side, right? From the owner
yeah. It's
side,
like
maybe it
just
makes me sick, but from the other
yeah. From
side,
the
it's like,
owner, you're gonna be
holy
like,
shit, I
oh
can't.
no. It's why on earth would I not? Is kind of his compelling thing. But if you are in a commodity business, so if you're selling tennis shoes, if you're selling toilet paper, whatever, the things that you're going to have to do to stand out are going to be different than things that you are in a higher end specialization or boutique sort of business. If you do a $25 discount for a heart surgery, it's probably an awkward mix because nobody's looking for the cheapest heart surgeon, right? Like that's just not something that they care about in that transaction. They want to know that you're not going to kill them, that you're going to keep them alive for the longest amount of time possible. But if you're buying toilet paper, sure, take my 25 cents off. Like, no big deal. I'm probably not brand loyal to that thing. So, regardless of whatever the thing is, the first thing I would say is be very, very good and distinctive at whatever it is that you do or sell. So, because I think a lot of people stop short at actually being like, hey, you actually have to be marketable. It doesn't matter how cheap toilet paper is if it sucks. It doesn't matter how cheap the shoes are if the second you put them on, they're kind of falling apart and dissolving. Like they have to be something worth marketing first.
Great.
It's not
That's a
always
great term.
quality. Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't have to be the best, right? It's not like, hey, nobody has my tools, nobody has my training. I remember I have a friend who's a chiropractor, and he spent like months going to Europe to learn a special technique to treat whatever sort of nonsense Latin language. And I remember just like hearing him ramble on and on, and he was beaming. He was so proud of himself. I didn't understand a word he said. And I said, but can you make my back pain go away? Like, yes or no? I don't care about all the things. Just can you make my back not hurt? And he's like, oh, well, yeah. Okay, well, start with that. Start with you can do the back pain, which gets me to the second point, not just be marketable, but understand exactly the problem you're trying to solve. The more painful the problem and more difficult the solution, typically the more you can charge for that solution. If you are doing something where it's like, hey, everybody on the street can mow their grass, cool. You might not be able to charge $300 to do one lawn. Like that might not be a product market fit that makes sense for you. However, if you find the intersection of like, hey, the people in my neighborhood, they're affluent, they have extra income, they just don't have the time to mow their grass, but they want it to look like they did it themselves. Yeah, you could probably find a way to to find that intersection between the way that they value their time and the way that they value their ego to actually price something. So now it's something that's marketable, making sure you understand exactly the pain you're trying to solve. And then the third thing I think is a really big deal, which I think everyone overlooks, which is be so good that people want to talk about it on your behalf. So the weird example here is like this idea of, and this is like the fundamentals of branding. But if you imagine like a 2x2 matrix of like a woman talking about her lover, if the lover's saying, I'm a great lover, everyone tunes him out. But if the woman says, he's a great lover, everyone pays attention to the dude. So you want to be so good at whatever it is you do. You want to solve that problem so well that other people want to talk about you and other people want to listen. Like when you can do all three of those, no matter what business or industry application you're focusing on, you're gonna be off to a pretty solid start.
And those are really important. Those are really, really important things to think about. And I think the hardest thing to grasp is, am I marketable? You know, no one cares that if you've been in business since
Yep.
1962. Congratulations, you've been in business in 1962, but you probably have a job. You may not have a business. Because if you were in business since 1962 and you're not some giant company, you probably missed the boat and, kind of deal. That's not being marketable. That's just being sustainable or maybe even lowering your
It's
standards,
yeah,
right? Just saying, oh
it's
yeah,
kind of like this is a weird metaphor, but several years ago I went to a church, and every stay on the church they would recognize people who'd been married either 5 or 10 years, like on those milestone anniversaries, right? So hey, so and so's been married 25 years, so and so's been married 30 years, and just have these people pop up and be recognized. But to your point, at some point, people have been married 60 years, 70 years, and this sounds awful. At some point, I started thinking, that's not a big deal. All you guys did is celebrate not dying. Like, that's not noteworthy. What's noteworthy is people who go through really, really difficult times together, figure it out, and get stronger through it. I want to talk about those people because those people have something to celebrate. But just like, hey, we didn't die this year. Well,
holding
that's
hands, holding hands while they're going walking somewhere for 70 years. That's probably a little bit more important than the other side. That's a really interesting point. I've never heard it talked about.
yeah,
That's thank you for not dying. I'm not sure that's not a good marketing strategy. Um, but
yeah. It sounds dark, but it kind of is the same thing, right? Just because you have paid federal government taxes or had an LLC in good standing for 17 years doesn't inherently mean anything. It doesn't, other than you pay your annual renewal fee for your state to renew your LLC
yeah.
or whatever your status is.
So yeah,
Like
so back
that's all it means.
Yeah, that's abs and my takeaway is, being marketable, and everyone says we do a great job, I got a great team, I got people. Don't say it, prove it, right? So the idea is like, what
Yeah.
can you do to I have a good friend of mine owns a carpet cleaning business, and literally, like, before they walk in, they create an experience. Like they don't just put the booties on. They have a script, they offer them 3 free gifts. They say, "Hey, if you don't hire us today, here's a guide on how to hire the next guy. Like here, and no matter what happens today, these are free gifts for you to have for the life or whatever. And then while we're waiting, let me find a few pet stains. They put on their special glasses and they look for pet stains and a little light and they clean 2 or 3 pet stains for free. Okay, Mrs. Jones, now how can I help you? Oh, I didn't know I needed pet stains. Again, it's this dramatic
Yeah.
demonstration on top
Yeah.
of being remarkable, which is, hey, I can't give you a price, but I can give you some free stuff in order to start the conversation. Because then what happens? The defense comes down, right? And people are there, you're trying to help them, right? So there's lots of techniques you can do and learn to break that defensive barrier down because everyone's worried about, am I getting overcharged? And are you going to do a good job? And in some industries, are you going to show up? Like in my market,
Yeah.
Southwest Florida, these guys are saying, well, owners on the job every day. And the smart people say, are the workers on the job every day? Or just you driving around looking at job sites all day long? And that's kind of we had a friend of ours from my wife's design business said the owner said that I'll be on site every day. And the guy's like, he's an retired executive of a Fortune 100 company. Well, are your teams going to be here every day? And the guy didn't have an answer. That was kind of funny. Have an answer if you're gonna say that, right? So, and I give him
Crazy.
credit, he tried, he was showcasing that says, "Hey, I care, I'm not just throwing you out, I'm doing other stuff," but, it was just kinda funny that I don't know there was a marketable moment. In his mind, he was marketable. Um, and that line, so how do you so people that are their businesses are growing, where should they I mean, obviously, listen to podcasts are great, but where are some places they can go be and go see to kinda learn what other people are doing? Because usually it's always easier to find out what other people are doing and model it and partner with people who are. But where are some places or some things that they could think about going to see about if becoming marketable is kind of that objective? Where should they start?
Yeah. What's really cool about this day and age, just talking about this to someone the other day, there's more information and resources of knowledge available today in 2024 than there was 5 years ago, 10 years ago in any industry. It is nuts. And you could talk about the advent of Amazon becoming more and more prolific. You'd say the role of TikTok in the way of people consume and absorb information. But the point is, there's never been more available high quality information. So in most industries, you'll probably find access to podcasts. There's a whole lot of great podcasts, like you have, say, a great podcast. We have a podcast called Blue Collar CEO that provides stuff just like this. There's also books that people like to read. I am a huge fan of actually reading books. Personally, I like to read a physical book. I like the nostalgia, I like the smell, I like the thing. But books on tape, like Audible books, are kind of totally a thing too. Get in the car, drive, put it on, and learn something. Ideally, you want to learn from people who are smarter than you, who've done it bigger than you in other places, so you can kind of like learn direct insights. There are things like masterminds. We can find groups of people who do it together. And they maybe have different markets. They might have slightly different sort of specializations of what they do, but they all share a sort of common framework that they operate from. You also have best practices groups. So in my space, I've got groups like Nextstar, CEO Warrior, that teaches people in the trades business acumen, leadership skills, financial practices, like things that typically you don't learn in a blue collar industry. They teach you those skills so you can build a better business. But at the end of the day, all those are about accessing community. Like I'm a big, big component of having a solid, stable community. So if you're trying to grow and everyone in your personal network is trying to stay stable, you probably need to discard your personal network or at least dramatically lower their influence in your life and look for people who are always trying to grow, who are always trying to scale, who are always trying to improve. And because we have things like TikTok and Facebook groups, it's never been easier to connect with people who
Right.
are like-minded on those journeys. So really, I would have a hard time saying like, hey, grow a rock. Chances are you're going to find a resource that you could figure out how to apply.
Exactly.
Podcast, books, masterminds, best practice groups. There's a ton of them. And also, I'm also a fan of like, don't necessarily do something because it's popular.
Right. Yeah.
Don't just go
Good
to the
point.
dude coming into your town, like selling out the stadium, be like, I'm going to help you 15x your business in 30 days. Like, try not to drink Kool-Aid. Try to find people who share the priorities that are important to you, that the values are important to you. Don't just do the next cool, trendy, high ticket offer. Um, and find things that you can actually value from.
Right. And so funny story. So Ryan and I were doing a pre-call. So I was doing some research on who else he's had interviewed. And two people jumped out, right? One, Chad Peterman of Peterman Brothers in the Midwest. I'm not sure which, he's in like five
Yep.
cities. His business is Bananas and Ruth King, who's a financial whiz for contractors. So if you haven't listened to those, go back and revisit them. I'll put those in the show notes to connect back to those two personally. And I'm going to send those to both of them because Chad is an amazing, it's a family business. I want to say it's third generation. I'm not sure if it's second or third. I know his dad had it, and then him and his brother have blown it up. I met Chad at a mastermind.
Crazy.
Right, I met Chad at a
Yeah.
mastermind. We were together for almost 3 years in a mastermind. We got together 3 times a year plus events, so we saw each other up to 5 times a year, and then the same with Ruth King, Ruth and I. And I'll tell you my story about masterminds because I haven't shared this on the podcast yet. I was in a marketing mastermind, and I had been a fairly successful consultant. I owned a tech business. I sold it 20 years ago, right? I had a team of people. I was doing a certain thing, and I had always been kind of this master of all trades as it relates to selling and getting more. We were doing a lot of technology and funnels. Again, this is 5 years ago. It was more exclusive than it is today, and a little less hard and a little less attainable, right? Guys that wanted to do funnels for you 5, 7 years ago, they wanted 30, $50,000 to do funnels, and I was like, man, I didn't really know. So I was with my wife, and they had a pitch an event, and it was a lot of money. I wanna say at the time, it was like 12 or $15,000 plus travel, plus out of the office, other stuff. So you're talking like a 20 or $25,000 investment, and I was like, "I can't go." And my wife said to me, she looked me right in the eyes and says, "You can't afford not to go. Go back in the room and find out about it." And she's like, "Here's the damn order form. I filled it out. Just sign it." And literally now it was no peer pressure because the way they did it, and it turned out to be the most amazing experience of my life. I ended up running a kids entrepreneur program for the particular group I was with.
That's cool.
So I got to be behind the stage and on stage. I had, and these kids don't realize it. Not only did the kids get to meet every one of the speakers in our industry that would come in and share their little snippets with the kids and bite-sized stuff, but they got to meet Steve Forbes, who at the time he had run for
Mm.
president twice, and he was unbelievably he was such a good speaker because he had grandkids. He was talking about, I don't know, financial stuff that happened in 1912, but he wrapped it back into modern day stuff like that. As well as Alan Mulally, who Alan was the CEO of Boeing during 9/11 and the CEO of Ford during the Great Recession. And both of them being grandparents understood what we are trying to do. It was like, now me, I had goosebumps and
Yeah.
I had other people helping
Yeah.
me. And a couple of the kids were like, that was pretty cool. I'm like, just Google them later. You'll know how actually lucky you were to spend some time with them. But I look at this going, how did I get here? One, I joined a mastermind, so I wanted to be around like people. So Tony Robbins talks about you are the sum of the 5 people you hang out with. He probably stole that from Jim Rohn. I think he did. And the second thing is join a group, find a group. Even if you want to start one in your community or in your industry, because there's people you meet at events that maybe at similar stages, and maybe you can help each other out. Because technically you're competitors, but y'all need help. And there's always ways to do that. So there's lots of great ways. But there is nothing like writing a check because when you want to throw up, when I talked about the offer earlier, when you throw up a little bit. Now, by the way, I don't have a mastermind, so you can't join it. Sorry. But joining masterminds are unbelievable access. Don't get caught up too much in it because they're not everything, but they certainly will help you think about. You tell your peers you're going to do something in a quarter, and you don't. Because I'm in one that the guy goes, Bryan, you said you were going to do this quarter. How'd that go? And you're going, "Oh, shit." And but so you
Yeah.
only do that once, right? So that because they've got nothing. The beauty of masterminds, this because you're in them, I'm sure, is people will hold you accountable to what you say. And if you're blowing smoke and calling it sunshine, they're gonna say, "You realize you're calling it," because they're not in they have no interest in your business. Your
Yeah.
wife, your husband, your
I'm
brothers,
so
your
like,
family,
yeah,
they don't.
my experience is similar. I belong to a mastermind where I am by far the smallest business operation there. And it is the coolest, like that is 100% the way I would recommend anybody do it. Like be the dumbest kid at the table.
Exactly.
Because even if they're not directly helping you, like even if you're not saying, here's the thing I can't solve and I'm losing sleep or having issue with payroll, whatever, even if you're not saying your problems, hearing people smarter than you who have scaled more successful than you, how they think,
Right.
just being around them makes you better,
Because
even if it's not directly about your business.
and think about it, and every one of them was you at one point. No business ever
Mhm.
existed went from no customers to 1,000, unless they bought somebody, right? Because somebody was always customer 1, then there was customer 2, there was customer 3. Even these giants, even the AT&Ts of the world and the Microsofts of the world, they all started with 1 customer, right? It all starts with 1, with scary number of businesses, 1, but you gotta get 1, then you get 2, then you get 4, then you get 8. But being around those people, Again, I'm sitting here having lunch with Al Mullally telling us about,
Mhm.
the behind the scenes story of what was happening during the great crisis, of 2008 in the supply chain, right? Having conversations with the president of the United States. He goes, "I don't care your politics." When the president of the United States calls you on your cell phone and says, "Please hold for the president," he goes, "That's pretty cool."
Yeah.
And these guys were saying, listen, at that level, right? The Boeings and the Fords and the GMs and stuff going, listen, if we have a supply chain crisis and these companies go away, there's not going to be tires for buses. There's not going to be seats for trains. And so, I mean, it's stuff that we don't think about, right? We think they got bailed out. But by just being in a room with these guys, and I learned very early on in my career, all those executives, all those big shots, they get dressed the same way we do. They drive the car the same way they put the stuff in. Now they're not lucky. They've worked really hard. They do great things, admire them and model them. But they're just like us. They're just like us.
Yeah.
And if you treat them like you treat your esteemed colleagues, they appreciate that the most. Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of fun. Anyway, so I don't
They're
know how we got talked on. So
everyone that I
masterminds are
know who's a yeah, masterminds are great, and I would kind of maybe add on too, like, if you do have the opportunity to meet with someone who's a very high value, high influence CEO, they are so used to people tiptoeing around them.
yeah,
Like, treat them. You said esteemed colleague. I 100% agree. Like, talk to them, politely disagree, challenge ideas because they're so used to people around them being afraid to speak up.
yep.
So be respectful, contribute to good conversation and dialogue. Those are always fun interactions.
So along this, we'll kind of, I think we're kind of coming to an interesting close, but I want to share one story. Alan Mulally talked about this publicly. So he talked about when he was the CEO of Ford, he created this system. It's for lack of a better term, red, green, yellow, right? So he's in a business and he's like Ford set up that there's 72 different business unit presidents. It's global. It's all over the world. It's everything. Like cars have, trucks and heavy trucks, everything else. And he goes, so when he came in at Boeing, he did this during 9/11. So it's a crisis management tool. It's a quality tool. If something is red, what does it mean to be red? And then there becomes a triage team to help go fix it. This does wrap back down to your business of any size in a minute because I use those in my little business. But he talked about the fact that everything for the first 3 weeks when he was the new CEO, everything was green. He's like, okay, that's fine. They had a weekly meeting, it was an hour and a half. It was people from all over the world, and they had 3 slides and da da da. Everyone was green. And then the next week comes by, and there was everyone green, but everything's green but one red. And it was the guy that was, I don't know, it was the Ford Bronco program, and there was some latch that wasn't latching right, and it was causing recalls, blah blah blah. And he stopped the meeting and went like this, clapped. It said, I was finally waiting for someone because a culture of everyone kissing up to the boss. He said, think about it. He goes, we lose $1 billion a day. I'm not doing them. He's like telling the management team, he's like, at this point, we're losing $1 billion a day. That's a billion with a B. And I'm sitting in a room with 100 and whatever it is of the smartest people in the world. And you guys all think things are sunshine and roses. Guess what? Because it had a culture of if you were the one raising the red flag, you were getting shuffled out the door. So the guy that got the guy that did the first red ended up getting promoted to be part of the kind of quality team to help Ford reestablish their culture to be quality. So don't be afraid to be the contrarian because you never know, you might leapfrog your career doing it. In my little business, I have a staff of people both here and remote, and we have a red, yellow, green system. Green is great. Yellow means someone needs to be looking at it. Red means I, as the CEO or someone on the management team, needs to be looking at it. It can be just as simple as that. And even the email should say red. Right, and by the way, and you'll teach your team a red to a tech may not be the red to the CEO, right? So if the tech can't get a part to work, to him that's a red, but to the CEO, it's just, hey, we don't have enough parts on the trucks for an example, right? So they're all
Right. Sure.
different,
Sure.
right? So again, that's open to massive interpretation there. But don't be afraid to encourage your team to share with you deficiencies in the process because they're just facts. As you go and build these SOPs and SOPs, if you just start with checklists, God, by all means, start with checklists. I've heard of people using index cards. They staple index cards to a job order and say, this is all that has to happen. Because as technicians are new into certain businesses, again, it's whatever works. But don't be afraid. Don't punish people for showing deficiencies or asking for help because they might not ask for
Yeah.
it. And, you know, in investing in training, investing in masterminds, what if I train someone and they leave, And then the answer for a lot of us is, what if I don't train them and they stay?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's a good wrap. So Ryan, this has been an amazing 40 minutes plus a few of my life. Can they show me where they can get a copy of your book or some chapters of your book so that they can and also subscribe to Blue Collar CEO podcast. I did see that. I'll have those in the show links and on the emails that go out. And then where can they find their book?
The book, they can go on Amazon. It's literally I tell people, like, I wrote the book on digital marketing for plumbing and HVAC contractors because that's literally the name of the book. It's called The Book on Digital Marketing for Plumbing and HVAC Contractors. Go to Amazon, get it shipped to wherever you want.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I'll put
that's
that link
that.
in the show notes so
Yeah,
that you're looking to it. You can just have an easy click. We'll take care of that. And Ryan, I can't thank you for the amazing time. It's an honor to meet you. I'm sure our paths will cross again because I'm going to talk to Chad and Ruth about what an amazing experience I had with you. And they'll be like, oh, did you talk to this guy? I talked to that guy. So again, as always, when you're out pulling your cars into people's driveways, we want you to think about how you can be better marketers so you can build the business you want and not the one you have. Thanks for being a listener. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
thanks, Brett.